2, 1. Let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of Cartoon Clash with Steven Universe versus the Powerpuff Girls.
Dear Lord.
Dear Lord.
Have mercy on us.
Let's talk about Steven Universe first.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's say this about Steven Universe. Steven Universe is one of those shows that came out of like in 2014. The only reason I got into this is because Paleo is my cartoon friend who messaged, hey, you should watch this, and I go, okay.
Yeah, and I was watching Steven Universe, and I was like, oh, it seems like a fun show, and then the finale happened, and that's when everybody got into it. After the
Paleo can be a hipster. I watched it.
Yeah, I was like, I watched it first. I watched the pilot.
I was super late on Steven Universe. I think I watched it half a year after it premiered or something, and only because some friends were telling me that I should maybe watch it, but they weren't super excited about it, not super stoked, and I wasn't either. The first few episodes didn't really grab me. And I don't even know which episode it was that got me hooked on the show, but at some point I just realized that I wasn't into the episodic stuff at all. Yeah. And for as long as there wasn't any story involved with it, I just couldn't get into it. And that never really changed with the show.
It never did.
Yeah, you know what the thing is? Let me say this about the Steven Universe thing, because I agree completely. Because I remember when Paleo first said you should watch it and check it out. I watched a couple episodes and I was like, oh, it's a cute show. But then the episodic stuff started happening later on. I was like, okay, I guess I got to go back and marathon all of this stuff. And it was some of them I did like, but some of them I was just because that's the thing with shows these days. They start off at this goofy tone. A great example of this, I'm just bringing this up real quick, then go back to Steven. It's Star versus Force of Evil. The first season of that show is just episodic fun, but then gets into the storyline. You're like, oh, what's gonna happen next? And that's the thing. What happened with Steven Universe is just it's just oh, these superhero aliens are in the city. They do this and they do that. It's nothing big. They're just having fun. But then all this stuff happens and all this drama happens, and it's just wow, making me
crying
feel some
breakfast
stuff.
Friends.
Crying breakfast friends. The show that start off with freaking kitty cat. What is it? Go kitty cat. He left his family behind. That thing.
Yeah, that was funny.
It's weird in the sense of I personally don't care for episodic story. It didn't have the episodic story that made me grab to it. It wasn't say Ed, Edd n Eddy, which is episodic where it's oh yeah, this is funny. I can get along with this and watch it. It was just okay, it's okay. But then once the story comes in, it's fine.
I think the problem with Steven Universe is that I just don't care about the side characters all that much.
Yeah,
that's a big thing.
That is a huge thing. I'm going to bring up in a later matchup.
I have no issue with Steven and the Gems, but everything else going on in Beach City is just not for me, and it sucks because that's a huge part of what makes the show when it isn't relying on its story. But yeah, there are some other great parts about that show. I think it's one of the most well-animated shows Cartoon Network currently has, even though people just keep on giving it flack for it.
Overall, I feel the animation's good. I can see people being distracted by the wonky faces and stuff. Personally, I've been watching the show since the beginning, so I kind of became desensitized to it, and I kind of just accepted it. I kind of like it.
Yeah, same.
But I can see why people would be distracted by it. But one problem I would have is some action scenes do feel too floaty. Some action scenes feel floaty, while others seem to work.
Another point about Steven Universe, another negative point, I guess. Rebecca Sugar is a weeb, and there are so many freaking anime references in the show.
Technically, tons of Cartoon Network shows have anime references. Even the original Powerpuff Girls. A lot of the stuff was references to obscure stuff that we're too young to.
Yeah,
sure.
Powerpuff Girls had a whole Dragon Ball Z fight that I'll get into later. But yeah, it's one of those things.
And that esoteric episode of the Beatles, where it's as a kid, did you understand that Beatles episode?
I knew who the Beatles were because my parents loved them, but I didn't get the episode fully. I couldn't appreciate it fully, where it's we are the Beatles, and it was going through the documentary format. I didn't get that reference, but I knew who the Beatles were because my parents had all the
it's hard to explain how I feel about references in shows, because there's certain references oh yeah, I get the reference, and then there's certain times oh, that's straight up the same thing. There's straight up a GameCube in Steven Universe.
Well, that's not so bad. I feel we were talking about Billy and Mandy and Kids Next Door, and those shows are just loaded with references. And I feel as long as someone who doesn't know these are references at all can get it, if they can still follow the story, it should be fine. Like, you can have references.
Yeah.
It just the story just has to stand on its own.
Yeah.
Well, they have like that whole episode with Garnet training. That was like very just anime, and it's just like, I will say this about Steven Universe. Me and Saber do share like a favorite character. Like, I do love Lapis later on, like where like because when Lapis first shows up, you know, I'm just like, oh, she's, you know, Lapis, whatever. But whenever since she came back, she has this personality that's just like very reminiscent of like Saitama from One Punch Man. Just a very like, I don't care, I'm indifferent, but okay, this will do, whatever. Just like, she has this sort of like tone and personality that I just love, and I was like, I like that type of thing about her.
Yeah.
So
I feel I sort of feel bad for having Lapis be my favorite character because I feel like she's sort of meant to be that brooding teenage girl everyone is supposed to relate to when they're watching, but like I can't help it. I feel like,
she's awesome.
I guess as far as how I feel about it, I feel like Steven Universe suffers a lot from just its episode release, its fan base. Because like if you think about it, when Powerpuff Girls
Well, that's not
existed,
the show's fault. I don't know. Powerpuff Girls is, I don't know, the whole joke about Powerpuff Girls is essentially like little girls beating up these creepy monster men and stuff, and it's like now we have Newgrounds and like edgy humor on cartoons that's more prominent. That's not, that gag isn't as strong.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Saving the world before bedtime.
It's got a good theme song though.
Yeah, it has a great theme song. The thing is, like, Steven Universe, I to go with like what Saber was saying, like, I do like see some faults because of those certain things, but again, I can't damage the show because of that. Because like when the show is generally good, I do like it. Like whenever they're in space and doing the storyline, it's just like I'm for it. But when they do these side storylines of like, oh, Lars has got to make a party, and Sadie's gonna sing a song, like shut the fuck up, go back to space. Like what the fuck? I don't want this storyline.
Don't you want to know what watermelon Steven is up to?
No, I don't. I really don't care. I generally like the thing about that show is it has such a problem with like, okay, I like Steven. I do like Sadie to a point, and I like the gems and stuff like that. But everyone else in that show, were like, I remember so vividly. Like I remember we and Paleo and our friend Hirosashi, we were watching like the new Steven Bomb, and they premiered the episode where they were going. They just came back from space. All that shit happened, and then like the first episode is Steven saying, "Well, what do I do? Well, we gotta help Mayor Dewey out." Like, are you fucking serious? Are you fucking kidding me right now? It's just I wanted to see the storyline, and then they had this whole thing with like Connie being upset at Steven, and that whole storyline just I felt nothing for it.
On the other note, in Powerpuff Girls, like even if there's like a certain like slice of life episode with one of the villains, like when Mojo Jojo
getting eggs,
it's hilarious.
Trying to get his breakfast.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but essentially, like, I feel like if Steven Universe did not have an ongoing storyline that we cared about, like, we wouldn't mind the townie episodes.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, the townies that just aren't that interesting compared to the other shows.
I feel like I just wouldn't watch it, to be honest. Like, if there wasn't a narrative, I'm not sure if I'd be totally interested in the show. I'd continue watching it for the songs mostly, but like most of the little stuff going on in that show, I just couldn't care less about it. There's no real replay value to the show. I never feel motivated to rewatch a particular episode, something that I see myself doing far more often with the original Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah,
Yes,
Powerpuff
exactly.
Girls is very rewatchable.
Yeah, I rewatched it all the time on that DVD set. Like, I really wish
Yeah.
it would have a Blu-ray set already, because I could just rewatch that show constantly. But another thing, just to add, like, because I do enjoy Steven Universe. I love the music, I love the storyline, and there's certain things. When I was talking about the side characters, I don't care about. A show that does this phenomenally well is Star Versus. Like, Star Versus has side characters that I'm interested in what they're up to. Like with Steven Universe, it's just like, but then with Powerpuff Girls, the way they played with the social norms of like, oh, well, men can join this group, but let me ask you this: who goes and cooks your food and who takes you to bed? Our dad. Who like, takes the clothes? Our dad. Who does this? Our dad. And it's just like, well, what does your mother do? We don't have a mother. And it's just weird. Like, I love that whole episode.
Even like it played with a lot of different like scenarios where they moved to the town of Citiesville, where it's like a town that just didn't like want superheroes. And it was like,
Well,
you walk like a normal person.
And then, like, when they fought the monster and destroyed it, at the very end, it's just like, do you know how much property damage you caused?
Yeah.
Let me tell you. And it's just it was so great.
Speaking of monsters, I also do like the villains in the Powerpuff Girls.
No, the
whole
villains
lore.
are great.
The villains are so memorable. Like, like you remember all of them. It's like, oh, it's Buzz Lumpkin. He's going plumb crazy. It's just like,
Shut up! Yeah, shut up. I like it.
Miss Bellum, fine as as a woman, even though you never saw her face except for that one glimpse in the very finale. So
it
it's
was
just
like, it wasn't even the finale. It was like an anniversary.
Yeah, it was the 10th anniversary special.
yeah, and then Mojo got what he actually wanted, but it was just Miss
Yeah,
Bellum was a
turned out
fun and
Mojo
intelligent
wanted
character.
peace all alone.
Mojo go like they had so many things with Mojo as a character. I'm like, okay, so he's just minding his business, reading the paper, plotting evil schemes, and Townsville's just like, oh, let him get away
Yeah,
with it.
and like
Oh,
he works
birthday
with the Powerpuff Girls like on multiple occasions. There's one where like he just gave the Powerpuff Girls candy.
This was my favorite entire scene. Was when like that one Galactus villain.
Yeah, the Galactus villain showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to which Mojo like he's like freaking out because he couldn't like because
My idea!
That's my idea. My idea. And he started monkeying out.
the French bread shattering. Like,
The baguette.
Say it, Uncle.
Don't you forget it. Or like when Bubbles turned into Mojo Jojo, and he was like, I do not talk like that. I do not reiterate and talk over and over again and speak. Or he taught that whole class how to
I am
speak
clear,
like him. It's like,
to the point, concise.
nice. Yeah, good points. Like, I love that whole thing. Like that was one of the things about talking about the show. This is one of those shows. Like I know a lot of people don't care for the last season of Powerpuff Girls. I personally, it's way better than the reboot, and it's also way better than like when Dexter had their weird season.
Yeah,
or, like,
it's
when
still
other
better than
shows-
the Dexter like new season.
Yeah, it was just like I don't know what the heck they were thinking with that, but I loved it. I loved the characters. Him like being this like evil bastard, but then doing this thing where he's just like, "No, I'm going to give you free pancakes," and it's just like, why would you? You're the devil.
Was there an episode where they were looking around for a villain and they kept breaking into the different villains' homes and they were just doing their own thing? Like there's one where like him,
Yeah,
was
'cause it was-
doing like aerobics, and he's like,
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, because it was
like the gangrene gang.
Yeah, they were
they
making
would do
prank calls.
And then like, okay, you know what? I know Steven Universe has a movie, but can we? The Powerpuff Girls movie.
It is
just
amazing. I love
It's
it.
so damn good. I remember I tried to hide going to see that as a kid when I first because I was like
I didn't. I saw it twice.
I was a kid getting beaten up and bullied for stupid stuff like an anime. So I was just like, no, love that movie. Great movie. I'm sorry, we've just been talking about Powerpuff Girls. Steven Universe has good music.
fine.
There you go.
But like, now that we've brought up the reboot, I feel like there's a reason the Powerpuff Girls has had so many iterations over the years.
Like the
Right.
anime version. Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, yeah,
the
the
iteration
Powerpuff Girls.
completely missed the point of the Powerpuff Girls. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, the whole joke was just like little girls beating up grown men, and it was just like this edgy humor. And like none of the reboots do that. They try to soften up the Powerpuff Girls to match the merchandise, where it just looks like a bland, family friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
The only thing I do like about is I can't believe I'm saying this, the 2016 one, is I just like what they do with their eyes. Like when they like get excited, their eyes like dilate or they like go up and down. So I think that's the only thing I like.
I want to say something quickly about Steven Universe before we move on.
Oh, go ahead.
Because I was saying like how like I think Steven Universe suffers a lot from like it's what people hate on more. When people hate on it, it's typically not for the right reasons.
Right.
It's not the show's fault. But do you all think? I'm going to ask it. Do you all think Steven Universe suffers at all from its modern take on social issues?
I think so. Okay, I personally love the fact that they are able to say like we have two women who are in love with, even though their gems are non-binary, they say that they have feminine qualities. And like when the whole thing where they thought Ruby was a boy, they put Ruby in a dress, so like it was showing that Ruby is female, and they had that whole kissing. I like that whole aspect. I think that was great. I was in a barbershop getting my hair cut, and some of the barbers were talking about like shows where they like have gay characters now, and they were talking about the cartoons, and a lot of them, while they were kind people, it's just they're still very in that closed-minded sense of they shouldn't be showing that to kids. They should have kids like telling stuff like that. They shouldn't be. And I just kept my mouth shut because I don't want my hairline fucked up. And it was one of those things where it's just they were talking about it, and it was just interesting to hear adults who aren't really interested in they like share their points, and I can see why that would hurt the show from that aspect from like closed-minded people, but I don't see it for myself.
As with everything, as long as it's representation that doesn't hurt the overall narrative.
No,
And I feel like the show does that pretty well. And that
it's within the story.
I think Garnet's fantastic. I think she's one of the greatest characters in like quite some time, cartoon-wise. She's fun.
My favorite character is actually Pearl.
You know what? Can I give a prop to Steven Universe though? Because here's a prop to Steven Universe. They have there's this trope I fucking hate in every other show.
Like it's the only show I've ever seen do it.
Do this. So like what happens is Steven Universe has a Greg, his father, becomes rich from this song that he gets. Now usually in these shows you become rich for an episode, then you lose it. Greg actually keeps his money. Like, I love the fact that he actually is now this rich and has his money and can access it anytime. Because I fucking loathe in shows where they go, oh, I'm rich for a day. Oh, I lost it. Oh, I'm rich. Lost it. I hate that.
Also, they didn't do the whole, I'm rich, so now I'm an asshole all of a sudden.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he stayed modest.
I do like the relationship he has with his dad. Like,
again, my biggest complaint with Steven Universe is just the pacing. Jack, you said earlier where it's like, hey, this is really cool. We're picking up the pace with this cosmic stuff. And it's like, but what's Ronaldo up to? And it's like, I don't fucking care.
Like, what is he doing?
Yeah, I have a question. Like, how do you, I don't know, can someone who didn't grow up with Dragon Ball get into all these old animes that are filler heavy? Like, would they still sit down and watch everything?
So I have a question, a way to answer this in a way. So like, I think, like, as an adult, like, I can see that OG Dragon Ball is timeless because it's just comedy based and martial arts based. Like, anyone can get into that anytime. Dragon Ball Z, like, if you follow like all these new shows like My Hero Academia or One Punch Man or stuff like that, they like took what Dragon Ball Z did, but they improved upon it in certain aspects. Now there's some people who are super rabid and will say like Dragon Ball Z is just perfect whatsoever, but I'm one of the ones I can go, I love the show, I love the series and always will. I always tell people, if you didn't grow up in the 90s watching DBZ and you try to get into like the one we know with like all the Bruce Falconer and like epic music, stuff like that. But it was one of those shows where growing up you could enjoy it. But like, when people go back and when they watch Pokemon, it's just like, oh, it's a nostalgic factor. If someone who likes anime rewatches Pokemon, they may see that, oh, the dub isn't this great because that's not a jelly donut, that's a rice ball. It's, stuff like that. But I would put in that aspect in.
How's this all gonna age? Like, do people, I mean, can someone just go jump into Dragon Ball and like what Jack said?
Well, what I'd be interested in is if we'll ever see a reboot of Steven Universe, if that would even
it's
work.
gonna happen.
Yeah,
probably.
But
Probably.
Future.
I would just be because it's very much a product of its time right now. I feel like the Powerpuff Girls, since we're still comparing it, is much more timeless. The far more timeless show of the two. Just what it would look like in, say, 20 or 30 years. And
that's kind of cool to see because like just if you go back to like the 80s and you look at stuff like He-Man and Voltron and like Thundercats, like you compare them to like the 2011 Thundercats, the freaking 2002 He-Man series and the new Voltron series, which are all just incredible. It's just like fascinating thing, like, oh, could they do this with the Powerpuff Girls in a few years? Or will Steven Universe do this in a few years? Like, that's really cool to think about, like what the potential of that would be.
Right.
It's gonna be weird when somebody rewatches Steven Universe in a few years and then they come across the Uncle Grandpa episode.
Oh, no.
What is this? And now
It'll probably be like me when I saw the Simpsons critic crossover, and I'd be like,
oh yeah,
that was such a weird episode because he was like yellow too, and it was just like compared the that was a good job. But anyways, what would you guys say for this?
So yeah, Powerpuff Girls. Yeah, obviously, I love Powerpuff Girls. It's like one of my favorite cartoons.
Powerpuff Girls for me too is in my top 10 favorite animated series of all time.
Well, I feel like it's okay. There's two ways. Powerpuff Girls is easy to get into, and Steven Universe is a more ambitious show, but it's harder to get into. So I feel they're both gonna be. Well, they're both influential and stuff. So
yeah,
I guess in terms of, I don't know, Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote Steven Universe. Deal with it.
And you, Saber Spark?
All right, so we have 3 Powerpuff Girls and 1 Steven Universe.
Yeah.
Just I adore the characters from Powerpuff Girls. Steven Universe is great, but like I don't know, there's so many wonderful things from Powerpuff Girls that I love it.
Powerpuff Girls, hooray!
I'm fine with this.
Da, 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 da.
Your rat got cropped. Boom.
All right, so Powerpuff Girls is moving on to the next round. So we'll see you again next time. Bye, everybody.
Steven, you're out of this universe.
Oh no.